Welcome, fellow wine lovers. This is the Wine Ghost podcast. I'm Mate Bosch, a certified sommelier and seeker of hidden stories behind the most mysterious drink in history. For more information or direct contact, please look for the Wine Ghost on Instagram and Facebook. But now, please grab a glass, get comfortable, and listen to how the day's ghosts get out of the bottle. So this time you will hear my loose but engaging conversation with Athena Bochanis, importer of fine Hungarian wines based in New York. Athena is a former law student who fell in love with the Hungarian wine world and started her own import company under the name of Palinkerie about 6 years ago. Athena shares her insights about the beverage world's current trends and demand, talks about being a wine importer, and explains why education and environmental awareness comes more and more to the forefront in customers' eyes. If you stay tuned, you will certainly get a great overview of the Hungarian wine market, information about some lesser-known regions and indigenous grape varieties. Athena also explains the motives behind her slightly unconventional marketing practices and ways of generating interest around Hungarian wines. I also asked her to recommend 6 Hungarian wines or grape varieties to get to know the country's wine culture in a flight, and discussed how lesser-known regions should find their ways of getting more spotlight falling on them. Unfortunately, the sound quality is not the best, as you will hear, as we recorded our conversation via Skype without having the best equipment available, so I'm deeply sorry for that. On the other hand, I have no doubt that you will find Athena's persona as open and entertaining as I have, so the only thing you need is to get cozy and cheers. So, Athena, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
I actually have this had this idea to do the 6th podcast about the Balaton because I just recorded 5 episodes in the Balaton Uplands, and also some of your producers, so to say, or some producers of your portfolio have also recommended you from Somló, the Somlói Vándor, and also Gilvesi. And I just really wanted to talk to you and maybe get your perspective of the Hungarian market and how things are developing maybe, and how the US market sees the Hungarian wines, and maybe you can start introducing your business first and maybe tell a little bit about your profile.
Okay, sure. So, my name is Athena. I run and own and founded a company called Palinkerie, which is a Hungarian wine import company in New York. We specialize in all Hungarian wine, and this was my idea that I came up with about 7 years ago, probably. I had spent some time in Hungary when I was in school, and I loved Hungary, and I thought the food and drink scene was something really exciting, especially because I really didn't know anything about Hungary. In New York, I had been to Polish restaurants, German restaurants, Austrian restaurants, Georgian restaurant, but I'd never experienced anything Hungarian. So it was really fun for me to see like what a vibrant food and drink culture Hungary had. And this was sort of like an interest of mine, I guess you could say. Like I really thought it was cool. I was telling everyone about it. I was bringing stuff home from Hungary. And then I thought it would be maybe an opportunity for me to start a small business, and I could work with these cool products and maybe be a part of bringing this over to the US. So this was sort of the idea that I had when I started my business. And I started it, we just celebrated our 6th year anniversary. So the portfolio that I import is still all Hungarian wine, which is really fun and is pretty unique. Most wine importers will have a portfolio that is a bit diversified. So maybe they're specializing in a broader region, or maybe, they are specializing in French wine, but this is something that's really well marketed and known here in the US. Hungarian wine is still pretty new. People don't know too much about it. So a lot of my job is still kind of educating people about Hungarian wine, explaining to them what it is, giving them their first taste ever of Hungarian wine, telling them that yes, they make wine in Hungary. These are all things like people don't know.
And
So,
how is, sorry to interrupt, but it's I think it's a bold move to only have Hungarian wines, and I think Hungary is not really famous for easy to pronounce names, and you also I think it was really interesting what you did with this Harsh Life video. I think you
hmm
catch this vibe really well with this. Like you didn't want to be too serious with the names, but you
hmm
also it's like a little fun way to introduce this kind of new language.
hmm
Also, maybe.
It's really funny. So this Harsh Levelou music video. So about 2 years ago, a client of mine who buys a lot of our wine is a pretty big supporter of our Hungarian wines, just said to me totally randomly one day, was like, no one can pronounce Harsh Levelou, and this is going to be a problem for you because like at the time he was pouring a Harsh Levelou from us, but he said, no one, this word is really weird. Like no one knows this word, and this is going to be an issue. And those words he said to me, it was just kind of out of the blue and it stuck out in my head. Obviously, people, I mean, nothing about the Hungarian language to the English speaking ear sounds normal.
Mhm.
But Harsh Levelou, just that he like went out of his way to point that out. Like, I know you love Harsh Levelou and you're pushing it all around town, but no customer can even say this word. So it's really intimidating and no one wants to order it. And so just these words were repeating in my head that he had said. And I was getting all riled up thinking, well, all you need to do is just tell people the word a lot, expose them to the word, and then it's not that weird because, we drink wine with foreign names all the time. It's just words that people have seen before. So, like a good example is maybe something like Chocolat, like the wine from the
Mhm.
Basque region. This is a really insane word. It looks weird, but it had a trend. Everyone learned how to say it, and then it's cool. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna make a song where I just or a music video where I just repeat the word harsh leveloo a lot. And so I ended up with my friend, we like recorded a song where I'm singing and it's just harsh leveloo. We actually recorded several versions, by the way, of that song, but the one that ended up being in the music video is this kind of trap R&B version, which is also funny. And then I got some of my friends to wear sweatshirts that said Harsh Leveloo. And another client of mine, a friend from the wine industry who was an actor, I got him to play like the lead in this Harsh Leveloo music video. And it was so fun to record. Just like, we're all singing along to this song and pouring Harsh Leveloo on Jeff, and the whole thing was a blast. And really, it was really fun, but it's totally a marketing ploy. It's 100% made so that people would watch it, even if it's just 1,000 people in the wine industry watch it. After they've seen this video, they have heard the word Harsh Leveloo like
Yeah.
25 times. They've seen it, like 20 times. So you can't really say like, oh, I've never seen that word before, I'm not going to order it. So this was really the thought behind the music video, but it ended up being also just extremely fun to make that video.
Yeah,
And
it's so
yeah, it
true.
made me think maybe I should just make music videos, but maybe that's my next career.
Maybe. But I think it's a really good and innovative way because I think the wine industry maybe gets this critic sometimes that it's too old-fashioned maybe or too
hmm
conservative. But I think these kind of ideas and maybe really brave innovations are really stuck in people's mind, and I think it was a really great idea. And uh,
I agree with you that the wine industry can be a little bit old-fashioned, conservative. People still see wine as we need to have a wine dinner and a formal wine tasting, and wine is elegant. And it's not that I don't think that's great, but I think we also can make wine fun, playful, you know, late night in the club, like
mm,
music video. There's no reason why wine can't be in these scenarios as well. And it's something I've been trying to do with Hungarian wine, because not that many people promote wine like that. So when you bring in a new product, you want to think, okay, like, how am I going to make this stick out? And also, you do kind of have to make some bold moves, because already it's so bold that you're bringing in this thing no one's asking for. So you really have to make a statement. But for me, this is like really one of the funnest parts of my job.
Yeah, great to see something like this. And you also, I visited your website and it said like, welcome to the new old world, which I think really like a great and perfect wrap up what Hungary has to offer. Maybe can you leverage on that or explain this
Definitely.
reality?
Yeah, it's something I thought of how I would describe Hungary from an American perspective. People are really trying to figure out what is Hungary like. Most people haven't been, especially when I started my business. Now, there's been more travel to Hungary in the last 10 years, but it was really a place that no one knew anything about. They knew it was in Europe, but I think Americans have an idea of Hungary being really far east. It's like Moldova or something, like, or it's some part of Russia. So for me, it was explaining to people it's Western European. It's like, well, it's Central European, but it's really like how an American would imagine Europe, like, 50, 100 years ago. Like this really old-fashioned quality of life that I think for an American is very appealing and attractive, because we don't really have this. Hungary still has such an old-fashioned charm about it, I think. So, and it really is this old-fashioned European thing. And as far as the new old world, this is because it's new to us, right? So it's new to the consumer in America, but actually it's not like, oh, try this wine from China. They just started growing wine 5 years ago. This is try this new wine from Hungary. They've been making wine, longer than a lot of other people. So it's like a new discovery of something that's old, which I think is part of the charm, because actually finding things that are new, just like was just invented, was just a brand new wine region that was just planted. This is in a way not that interesting, because all of these new places have a lot of the same characteristics and they don't have a ton of history. But finding something new that has a bunch of history is really interesting, because it's new to you and you're uncovering like 1,000 years of tradition.
Mm. And I also see that you have producers in your portfolio from a lot of regions in Hungary. So Matra, Balaton, Tokaj, Szekszárd, Eger, Somló. And how do you source out these producers or look for producers actually? Do you go Hungary often or?
Yeah, I love to go to Hungary, obviously. Hungary's great. So I go to Hungary often to taste. When I started my portfolio, I did a bunch of research, just from New York online and in books, reading about the producers that you're supposed to definitely taste, the regions that you should definitely have represented. And then when I was still in New York, I was planning, this is in 2013. I was planning that summer to spend 3 months in Hungary. And the thinking was, I'm going to be there for 3 months and I'm going to travel around, taste a bunch of wine, and really try to get the lay of the land. So I did that in 2013. I reached out to a bunch of producers before I arrived and just cold called, emailed them. And a bunch of people agreed to meet with me and taste with me. And really, they took a chance on me too, because I said, I'm just starting this company. Would you be willing to taste? So that summer, I was in Hungary and I tasted. Divino had recently opened the wine bar in Budapest, and this wine bar was sent from when I lived in Hungary in 2010. Really, there was no place for wine in Budapest. I mean, the trendy bars in Budapest in 2010 were still rubble bars, like nightclubs. And by the time I was there in 2013, there was a wine bar scene developing, and it was all Hungarian wine in these wine bars. And I learned that from someone when I was there in 2013 that this wine bar, Divino, was the most successful bar in Budapest that year. And it really left a big impression on me because I thought, wow, I think I'm tapping into something also that is really developing in Hungary, the wine scene, the new winemakers, the new generation. And this having wine bars in Budapest and sommeliers in Budapest looking for Hungarian wine also makes my job a lot easier. It means that when I go to Hungary, I meet with somms, I go to wine bars, I see what they're offering, what's new, and I get to taste things like that. But still to this day, when I go to Hungary, so, when I started my portfolio, I selected, I think at the time it was 8 or 9 producers. And then over the years, I tasted different ones and I tasted more and I added people and etc. And things are changing really fast in the Hungarian wine scene as well. Like every time I'm in Hungary, there are new wineries on a menu that I've never seen before, even though I was in Hungary like 3 months before that. So totally new wineries. Everyone's talking about a new producer, this brand new estate. The one I used to like is closed. The other one is closed. So things are really changing fast. So I would say I have my core producer that I've had since this summer of 2013. And some of the newer producers I have maybe come up since then. And I was maybe found them through a recommendation by tasting something of theirs in Budapest. But I get a lot of recommendations. Winemakers or sommeliers will tell me, taste this, and then I'll be there and they'll say, oh, taste this. And then, the next thing you know, like you've gotten to taste all of these cool new wines. It's a really fun job, I must say.
I can imagine. And how do you maybe explain to this, just going back to this idea of the new world, how do you maybe explain the region of Matra or Sexar to a US customer maybe?
For me, I explain to them. So people say, oh, from Hungary, and they're imagining it's one wine region. And I say, no, there are 22. And I would say, perhaps, let's say I poured you a wine from Matra. I would say Matra is in northern Hungary. It's continental weather, sunny, hilly, with volcanic soil. And it's neighboring a more famous region called Eger. And Matra is like the neighbor of Eger, where you can find people, I think, maybe a little bit more innovative, a little bit more affordable, but you could still get a similar quality to Eger. And I would actually say the similar thing about Sexar. Sexar is like a great wine region in the south, bordering a more famous wine region, Vilain, where I think you can get just as good of quality for maybe people are a little bit more open-minded and a little bit more, I think definitely more affordable in Sexar compared to Vilain. So that's how those two regions specifically, I would probably say this is in the north of Hungary, volcanic soil. This is in the south of Hungary, more limestone soil. And they're both like a neighboring region to a more established, well-known region where you can maybe find like more interesting, better deals.
So that's why I actually asked about these two regions, because I also worked at some places in the world already as a sommelier, and like almost everybody knew Tokaj and maybe Vilain, and that's it. But that's really interesting. How do you try to like kind of link to these more famous regions, these lesser known regions? It's a risky way, what I kind of experienced, because then they say, okay, Matra, then it's something similar to this, but maybe it's a better deal. You know what I mean? So how do you try to give faces to the producers, or do you try to tell also more personal stories maybe about producers, or do you rather stick to regions when you try to sell?
I would say it really depends on kind of the circumstance, but let's say, a lot of my job is I'm going around, I have wines in my bag, and I'm going around to restaurants and shops tasting them on wine and telling them about the wines as they taste. So in this context, some people do bring around like photos of the winemakers and stuff, but I don't in this context. I will instead bring around I don't even bring around, but maybe let's say that we're doing a tasting and I'm showing you wines from like 4 different regions of Hungary.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just pull up my phone and I'll open a map of Hungary and I'll show them like, so first of all, they can see in the context, okay, this is further south than these places they imagine as cold Eastern European places, like Poland and Belarus. Okay, it's further south, so we're already warmer. It's actually quite close to like northern Italy, a similar longitude, so they can kind of identify with that. It borders Austria, so okay, we can kind of contextualize what I'm talking about a little bit because people in wine will know wine from Italy, even the north of Italy. And then I'll show on the map, like, see this ridge going from east to west in the north. That's kind of this hilly ridge. Along this ridge are a lot of the great wine regions of Hungary. So we have Tokaj, Matra, Eger, Balaton, all like, even kind of Somló in that direction, all along the north. And then some little hills in the south, and that's Szekszárvilág. So we can kind of follow the great wine regions when we look at the topography as well on the map. So usually I'm showing them a map and I think they think I'm pretty nerdy, but I think it's helpful for them. And it makes sense because when you can see it and you see the whole country and you see, maybe you don't remember the names, but you see, okay, like this makes sense. There's this ridge of hills with great like volcanic soils, etc., spanning the whole country. And these are all different regions. Like this makes sense to people. It doesn't seem random, I think. And you show them Balaton, and I think that's really fun to show people on Google Maps because they think they were just imagining some pond, some tiny little pond, and it's an enormous lake. And I like to tell people that around the lake, depending on where you are, you have a little bit of a different microclimate because that lake is so big, which they think is pretty interesting. And also the other thing I like to show on a map is Somló because Somló Hill is really just this perfect dot sticking out of nowhere. And you can see it really far away on the map. It looks like a little dimple, like a little, just this perfect little round thing. And you can just zoom in and you show people this is where the wine's from.
Do you think it also helps that, for example, Somló has a really like a significant grape that you can associate Somló with, like the Ufark, and also maybe it wraps up a little bit what the region could offer?
I think yes. I think that this helps when a region has a distinctive grape that people can associate it with. Somló has Ufark or it's not a grape, but maybe a style like Osu from Tokaj or Bull's Blood from Eger. If you have a distinctive thing that you can tie to the place, it definitely helps. Somló is difficult because Somló is a strange word, Ufark is a strange word, but I think that when it lands for people, this is definitely memorable. This is such a distinctive wine and really unique terroir, and you can taste the terroir in the wine, especially in a Ufark. So I think that's kind of the ideal. But the tough thing is, as you know, for a lot of wine regions in Hungary, they don't necessarily have like that thing. It's more, like just good wine comes from here, but they don't have like, oh, the famous, whatever.
They don't really have
the
a face.
famous, yeah, the Barachon Kadarka or something like they don't have.
Yeah. But do you think people from the US are looking for indigenous grape varieties? Or do they want to, okay, Hungary, I don't really know this region, so I maybe stick to international varieties. I don't take too much risks.
Right. So we have both in the portfolio because I think there are people on both sides. We definitely, like if I sell to a wine shop and they buy the Egri Bicaver, and they buy a Pinot Noir, both from Hungary. The shop tells me that there are some people who are looking for the native varietal, looking for the unique thing from Hungary. And there are a lot of people who are looking for a Pinot Noir, and this one's good. So I think both. There are just so many consumers in the US that it's so hard to generalize in big terms. And I think both of these there is a demand. But I think, the best way for us to market Hungarian wine in general is to establish Hungary as a respectable, reputable, high quality place for wine. Just Hungary. This is the best thing I think we could do, because if you can establish that something from Hungary is a pretty good quality, then, or it's handmade, or it's special, or it's worth trying, then pretty much within that, you could bring out a Pinot Grigio, you could bring out a Cake Nialu, you could bring out a Cabernet Sauvignon, anything. But it's from Hungary, and that has a certain attachment to it that's positive. So that would be the ideal, right? And then within Hungary, you could promote tiny wineries that are experimenting with whatever grapes they want and more flexibility. And that's also kind of the fun thing about the Hungarian wine scene, right? Is that there's so much going on and so many different varietals and wineries and styles. So the ideal is, if it's just a harder job, but is to promote like Hungary is a good place for wine.
And in this sea of producers, so to say, how do you really look for, what are your principles when you're looking for producers? Or what do you look or see in a wine that, okay, I have to take it? Of course, it has to have a certain quality, but what do you really look for in a wine?
Right now in our portfolio, the only producers I'm adding are people who are organic or working towards being organic. So that's a principle that I'm really committed to right now. I think that moving towards the future, thinking about environmental responsibility and sustainability, this is really something that matters to me. And if you are a small winery, then this shouldn't be that hard for you to do. And maybe it's a little bit of a risk for you to be organic and not spray pesticides in a rainy vintage, but I think on the plus side, you can promote your wine more effectively. You can sell your wine like to me more easily. So maybe it's more risky, but the reward could be higher. So this is a big principle, something I'm looking for. I'm looking for people who own their lands, who make their wine on their land. They don't buy grapes. So this also, it's pretty common in Hungary for people to have their own land and to make wine from their land. But in the US, it's not that common. A lot of people buy grapes. So this is really important to me. Just so, really, I'm only importing wine where we know exactly where it came from. We know exactly how it was made. It was made in a responsible way. And it really is something that's like new old world. Like, it's not a kind of a modern, designer lab created wine. It's an old fashioned style. It's a kind of working with the land quality of winemaking that is something that people are looking for. They don't want something perfect from a factory, right? They want something that feels organic and natural and just the olden times, made by hand vibe.
Do you think also people are looking for more like, okay, I know this word it's maybe overused, but natural wines or orange wines or this kind of direction?
I mean, it's totally overused, but you are totally right. People are definitely looking for natural wine and natural wine styles like orange wine, unfiltered wine, etc. I think that there's a lot of controversy around natural wine, what this means, if it's really important. And I think that for me, what it's coming from is it's a response to mass production wines. This style of food and drink is something that a consumer with enough money to care doesn't want. People don't want something that's mass produced and has chemicals in it and was artificially something. People want something that they think is more healthy, that is more eco-friendly, um, that is, yeah, sort of more natural. So this, I think it's also the case with food right now. This, and again, this is not every American. This is a particular, type of American, but it's also the type of American who would buy Hungarian wine. So we can focus on them. But it's really important to people what they're putting in their body. So I think this, and I support this. I agree with this. The natural wine scene, however, like I think it can be a little bit confusing what natural wine means. For me, the most important thing and why I support a natural wine is because I like the natural production methods of farming. This to me is really important. Also, like organic farming. And also, I don't want a wine that has added yeast because in Hungary you don't need this. There's native yeast floating around all these wine regions. So you can easily have fermentation without adding anything. So for me, this is also, it's a must in our portfolio, but it's very easy for the winemakers to have. You don't want wine with a ton of sulfites. And of course, I mean, if you don't need to have a bunch of preservative in your wine, you shouldn't have it. But I think the thing that's confusing is that natural wine to a lot of just consumers doesn't mean these things. It means it tastes a certain way and it looks a certain way. So natural wine means it's a weird color like orange, or it's unfiltered, so it's very dirty and cloudy. And it's kind of tastes like volatile acidity, or it tastes like mouse, or these things that actually are, technically flaws in the wine in the classic sense. And I think that we should still be able to enjoy like a range of flavors and colors in wine. Like the problem with some of the natural wine movement, I think it confused consumers with what natural means. And there's a lot of confusion, like maybe natural is just something that looks really pretty in this clear glass. But for me, the part of it that is, it's conscientious farming and good winemaking practices, responsible winemaking practices, this is great. And it's definitely something that people want, no question. And this is something I'm really trying to drill home to the winemakers in Hungary, who I don't think completely understand, like how important this is, and how, like, every year that passes, if you are filtering and fining your wine, you're making it harder for me to sell your wine. If you don't get that organic certificate, you're making harder for me to sell the wine. Like this stuff is really important to people.
I totally agree with you, and I think the world is really going that way, or even maybe a step further, going into biodynamics. And I think people are also looking for this in restaurants, but I also see that they find some of these wines kind of risky because sometimes they cost more, and it's more like a lottery for them, or that's what I hear from the guests, that they order one and they don't really know what to expect.
I mean, I totally know what you mean. I think that, yeah, for instance, a few weeks ago, I was in a restaurant in New York that's kind of famous for its only natural wine list. And I got a recommendation from the server, and the wine was just not good. And it was very expensive. And it was definitely a disappointment. And this is also a critic of sommeliers, I think. Like, we work so hard to be able to identify all the different nuances in a wine so that we can identify flavors
Mm.
and textures with certain regions and grapes. And when a wine is super natural, they all kind of taste the same. So you can't really discern very many different things in a wine. And I think this is a risk, right? Because part of the fun about wine is being able to have the whole world of wine at your fingertips. And that means being able to taste the different things about the terroir and the grape. And if the wine is overrun with volatile acidity, for instance, then all the wines have a similar flavor profile. So
Yeah.
this, or like mouse, then they all taste like mouse, or they all taste like bread. So you can't taste something different. But honestly, I think that the typical American consumer who would order a natural wine right now, I think maybe for some of them, not all of them, but I think for some of them, the reason that they're ordering the natural wine, or maybe the reason they were attracted to this natural wine thing in the first place, is because it was something where they didn't need to know about the grape and what it should taste like in the region. And so for them, Chardonnay and Pinot Grigio don't mean anything. Um, what they're looking for, maybe, is what they've had before, which was a wine with Brett and VA, and they think this is totally normal. So for them, for this type of consumer who maybe felt excluded from the wine conversation, like the classic wine thing, natural wine could be something where, hey, it looks really cool, the label's super cool, and I don't need to know any of that stuff, and I don't feel dumb when I don't know like what a Pinot Noir should taste like. So I think for them, if it comes out and it's kind of wonky and flawed and not what you expected, it's totally fine. Um, it's a strange moment in wine, and it definitely exposes, I guess, like shows that the American consumer truthfully just isn't super knowledgeable about wine because we don't have a long history and culture of drinking wine in the US. And still to this day, people drink more beer than wine and soda than wine. And now cocktails are a big thing. So we have a lot of competition with wine. And the average American does not know anything about wine.
Mm.
So it means it's sort of an opportunity in a way. Like it can feel frustrating when you're like, oh, I picked this amazing wine and you can't even tell.
Mm.
But it also is a big opportunity for you to bring in something totally new because there's a lot of people who don't really have a reference point. And maybe their reference point is juice and soda and seltzer. So you bring in a pet nat that's fruity and fresh, and they're like, awesome.
Mhm.
This is like a soda, or oh, this natural wine, it tastes like cherry Coke, like perfect.
Yeah, true. And I also that's why just going back to the beginning of the conversation, that's why I think it's really important to give face to also the producers, right? And also to give stories to the wines, maybe, or funny things or funny photos, maybe, of the dog in the
Hmm.
garden, and how do they treat the wine, and how do they make and do the cuttings together with the family. So I think it's this kind of stories maybe would sell wine more easily than a typical classic wine story, or maybe how it should taste in your mouth.
Definitely. I think because, yeah, you're right. It ties to this same conversation about people not really having a big expectation or a big demand in terms of flavor or style. People right now are kind of like, I don't know, give me something.
Yeah.
So in a way, it's a really opportunity for people to buy a Hungarian wine, but it also means that there's so many options now for things people could buy. So one way to stick out is exactly what you said, is with a good story.
Mm.
So I do, the truth is the winemakers of Hungary, I think in general, but the ones that we represent in our portfolio are really charming to an American. They're really friendly, they're fun, they're just nice people and very hospitable people. And so if, like, for instance, a winemaker is in town and I bring them to clients and we do things together, I mean, they leave a huge impression and it's always really positive. Or if anyone ever goes to Hungary, same. People are really impressed when they go to Hungary and with the people and the stories and the vibe of the place. And I do my best to kind of emulate that and bring that over. Um, and in a tasting, I think it's a little annoying if I'm like, I have a 30-minute appointment and I pull out photos of a winemaker.
Mm.
But I definitely try to promote the winemakers, their stories, what it looks like where they are, what they look like, what they're doing on social media. So I try to share like pictures of the winemakers, maybe like a little video of the winery, etc. Because I
Mm.
do think that the story is really important. And for me, the cool story about Hungary is that there's so many, but I think that Hungary is made up of, like, at least the wines I bring in and a part of the Hungarian wine scene is made up of tiny family run wineries where the winemaker and the vineyard manager might be the same person or they're brothers or something. And it's really this homespun small operation. Sometimes these lands were in the family and part of a hobby vineyard in the 70s. And these are really maybe like right outside their house. And it's really this handmade, homemade, family run, tiny production wineries. And there are a lot of these in Hungary. And this story is really appealing to people.
Mm.
Like that they've had wine for thousands of years. And even despite all the political challenges, you could say in the 20th century, people still find a way to continue these traditions in this small scale, which is really fun.
Mm. Just mentioning the stories and the social media, I definitely recommend the followers to follow you on Instagram, Palinkerie.
Oh, thank you.
And I think you are using the stories very well and interestingly. And how do maybe can you explain your philosophy behind using Instagram and how do you post the labels and maybe the stories and the tastings?
Sure. Well, I think for me, there's sort of two interesting like things I can share on social media. One is what it's like to be in Hungary. So for an American, I think it's really interesting to see that Hungary, Budapest, and there are a few other places, but mostly in Budapest, it's really a cool scene with really interesting food and wine, and all the wine is Hungarian, and the food hopefully is Hungarian too. This is really interesting for people to see who are here, who maybe have never been to Hungary and imagine it's some, you know, icy Soviet place, and to show them it's beautiful, it's cool, it's warm, it's fun. So maybe I'm showing them Budapest and then I'm showing them what it's like at these wineries. This is the winemaker, they're young, they care about the land. This is their gorgeous vineyard. This is the Cake Francos and what it looks like. This is Lake Balaton. These really beautiful things that I could tell you about, but for you to see is really a different experience. So I think for the American, this is so cool and interesting. And wow, like this is a cool looking place and these people look nice and this vineyard is unbelievably gorgeous and the scenery is more than they expected. And then I also will post things about what it's like kind of to be an importer, which I think is also interesting to people. So, like, oh, for instance, it's kind of a joke, but yesterday I had several tastings around the city and everyone is talking about coronavirus and just whatever. And my first tasting on the table with all the wines was like a big thing of hand sanitizer. And so we took some photos with the wines and the hand sanitizer together, like, back at work tasting 2020. Like, so this is also kind of what it's like to be an importer. Like, you're still out, you're still around town, you're still um, showing different people these wines, even in, like this weird moment when people tell you not to move around. So I would say like these are the two threads that I try to share on social media. And I think what I learned, and maybe this is something everyone already knows, but it's the more personal you make your social media, the more people are drawn to following it and interacting with it. You don't just want to post something like that's really impersonal. You want to show that this is actually what I do for my job. Like
Mm,
I'm actually at this tasting with this hand sanitizer and we're joking about it, but it's also the reality.
mm.
And this is the winemaker in Hungary and we're actually at this restaurant drinking these wines and it feels personal. It makes people feel like they can kind of connect with the
Mm.
people or the experience.
It's more authentic, right?
Exactly.
And how is actually your life? Like, how can listeners imagine a life of an importer what's maybe not seen on Instagram? Or do you enjoy it, or how is this life for you? Or I think you didn't grow up wanting to be a wine importer. So,
It's not one of the things they list for children to pick, no. It's really fun. Being a wine importer is, I would say it's great if you're a really social person and if you love to travel and you want to do 10 jobs at once, then being a wine importer is for you. um, I love it. So every day is different, and in my job, I do sales, I do choosing wines, I manage the things from getting the wine from Hungary to here. I manage the orders. I manage the social media. So I get to do kind of everything. Everything from choosing the wines, promoting the wines, selling the wines, and overseeing the logistics of all of that. So it's definitely it's a pretty unique life, I would say. And every day is very different. And you interact with a lot of people in Hungary and in the US. And I guess like it's very informal also, which is fun. I went to school to be a lawyer, which is extremely formal,
mm,
and every day is sort of the same and you go to an office and you wear a suit. This is the classic style. It's also changing a little bit, but being a wine importer could not be any different. It's so informal. I could just be in sweatpants at home. I could be out on the town in a ball gown. I could do it kind of whatever I want,
mm,
which is I think you have to want that type of lifestyle. There's very little structure.
mm. And you mentioned you meet a lot of people, and what's maybe your response from sommeliers about Hungarian wines, or maybe not, because in the sommelier curriculum, it's not the most important part, so to say, Hungary as a wine region, and maybe sommeliers or even master sommeliers don't really get to know this region very well. So how do they respond if you meet any?
That's totally true. That, as you said, in the sommelier curriculum, Hungary is not a priority. So I have a pretty good friend who's a master sommelier, Dustin Wilson, in New York, and his attitude, I think, is exactly how you would hope a master sommelier's attitude would be, which is, I'm so excited to learn about this thing that we didn't really cover, and you tell me about it. Because people that are really interested in wine, I think, are really interested in all wine, and even more so if there's something you can tell them that they didn't know about. So the response of Dustin and other really educated sommeliers is usually really positive. They're extremely curious about it and they love talking about Hungary, tasting different things, getting a lay of Hungary, because probably they're also this type of person that's, wants to know a lot about everything. I mean, a part of my job, you can imagine if even a master sommelier is like, what is this? A lot of my job, also with sommeliers who know a lot about other places, is to explain to them like what this is, where it's from. So there's education involved. So it's really not just here, taste this, doesn't it taste good? It's really, let me tell you about Hungary. Let me tell you about this region, this grape in Hungary, the history. And this is kind of part of, if you do a tasting with me, this is like a part of it. And I used to teach, so maybe this is also something,
An
fun
advantage.
for me.
Do you also have some wines in his store, like in because Dustin Wilson also has a store, right?
He does, yes.
Do you have some wines in his store
I
already?
do. I do. Yeah. Yeah. He had, it was maybe 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. His store is called Verve Wine,
Mm.
and they have a wine of the month club, and they did a Hungary box that went out to, hundreds of people around the US, and it was all of our wine, which
Oh,
was really fun. And we did a party for it in their store in New York, and I made kurözött, which
oh,
is
sure.
which is also called lip tower, which is a sort of paprika dip.
Mm.
And we had a little Hungarian party at their store in New York with our wines, which was really fun. And the staff, including Dustin, got to know all about these wines, really got to talk about Hungary a lot. And it's so awesome because old school people who care about wine, the people who would care about a Pinot Gris versus a Chardonnay
Mm.
versus, these people really respect the opinion of a master sommelier and a sommelier, an educated sommelier in general. And so to get the approval of a high ranking sommelier gives you a lot of credibility among those people. It's just funny because right now in the wine scene, it's really fractured. We have the old school Burgundy drinkers, we have the young hipster natty wine people, we have just like the common consumer who's like, what's kind of good, I don't really care like where it's from or whatever. So we have all these different people, and we're trying to kind of reach some of them in all the groups. But it's definitely like different techniques as far as how you get there. And it's funny because actually it could be the same wine, right? Like we can have a rosé that gets to just the common drinker who's looking for a rosé, that gets to the natural wine people because they think it's like a unique flavor, and it gets to the snobby wine people because it was at Verve. So
I know it's not really a fair request, but if you should maybe represent Hungary in a tasting with 5 wines, but which grape varieties maybe you should, that's a more fair request.
so
Which grape varieties would you choose?
yeah, I think if I was going to represent Hungary with 5 varieties,
And maybe with region.
I would show five. So few. Okay, it's all right. I would show a dry Furmint.
Mhm.
I would show an Asu that could be, any of the Tokai varieties. I would show a dry Härstevelu. I would show a dry cake Frankos. I would show a Bikaver. I would show Somlói Fork. I think that's 6, but I think those are the 6 that I would show.
Why did you pick these?
I picked 4 dry white, so 3 dry whites, 2 dry reds, and a sweet white. And I picked these because I think that these 6 wines are all something that are, you can only, like, this exact thing is really either you can only find in Hungary, or is the best expressions going to be from Hungary. And I think that's why, like, I would pick these, because in the world of wine, you imagine there's just a million wines, millions and millions of wines available. And if I'm importing or showing you wine from Hungary, what am I going to show you that's really, no matter what it's compared to, is going to stick out, is going to be special somehow, like either especially perfectly delicious or just you don't get it somewhere else. And for me, I mean, dry Furmit, dry Härstevelu, Tokaj Asu, this is easy. Or even Somlói Fork. These are all native to Hungary, and they're really excellent. For the 2 reds, I think Bikaver is only found in Hungary, and this is also something special, something distinctive. And a
With
dry
its
cake
story.
francoche, yeah, with a history. And a dry cake francoche would be my last pick. And there is cake francoche, Blaufränkisch, in Austria and Slovakia, Slovenia. But I think that you can have, it's my opinion that the climate and the soil in Hungary is the best for this.
Yeah.
So if you really take the time to craft an amazing dry cake francoche, I think this also can be the best expression of this in the world. It's native, and cake francoche is also something they haven't had. And I
No.
think it's makes a really delicious wine. So this is like something that if more people knew about, they would be clamoring for. It's really the flavor profile that I think a lot of people want. The natural wine people want it. The everyday drinker type wants it. Maybe even some of the old school Burgundy people would be open to it.
Mm. I think so too, and it also becomes more trendy, this kind of, yeah, medium-bodied red or even light
Exactly.
style, because the Parker wines are kind of, so to say,
Exactly.
the Parker wines are going out
Right.
of
Yeah,
trend.
this red fruit, this high
Yeah.
acid.
Mm.
Definitely.
Yeah, true. Great choices. I
Oh,
totally
thank
agree
you.
as a Hungarian. And
Good.
maybe just going back to the sommeliers and to the Hungarian market, or maybe to the master sommeliers, what do you think Hungary is really missing, or maybe Hungary as a wine tourism destination, and also Hungary as a wine market, maybe in a marketing perspective? What do they miss in general?
Ooh, I have a lot of feelings about this. I think that Hungary is missing a big opportunity for promoting their wines. I think that in other European countries, so all the countries in the EU who make wine have a budget from the EU for wine marketing. And this is not being used properly in Hungary. This is a fact well known, and the budget actually should be quite big. So none of it is being used for proper marketing of Hungarian wines. And this really upsets me because Hungary has it all except for marketing. Hungary has amazing wine, it has charming, wonderful producers, tons of stories, perfect climate, beautiful places. So the right prices, it really has like everything going on. But its biggest challenge is that no one knows about it. And if no one knows about it, no one's asking for it, and you're going to be beat out by all the other countries that are using their marketing budgets. So, for instance, here in the US, like in New York City, the Austrian government, which Austria makes less wine than Hungary, the Austrian government has a wine marketing office in New York, and they're people devoted solely to promoting Austrian wine in the US, and it's here. So in New York, everyone, not everyone, but like Austrian wine is very well known. It's at every store pretty much. And if it's not there, they know about it. It's very commonly in restaurants. It's something that even you don't have to be an expert to have had a bunch of Austrian wine. And it's
Mm.
cool. And they can get a pretty good price for it. They can really sell their wine more easily. And the producers also, because it's just more of an outward focus, the producers have a better idea of what would be a cool label for the US market, what would be an interesting style to sell in the US market. They have more natural wine as well because I think it's related to this marketing thing.
Mm.
And they can ask a lot for these wines. And in Hungary, so like you imagine at a wine shop or a restaurant, like there could be a Hungarian wine that's amazing and it's half the price, but no one knows about it. There's no promotion, there's no anything, and it doesn't get that placement. So, you know, I think we can't just imagine that you have great wine and it sells itself.
Yeah, true.
We all know, right, that like that it's sadly not what it's about. It's more important that you market it. And we've seen bad things marketed, right? Like really successfully. Because marketing ultimately is going to make or break your product, no matter how amazing or bad your product is. So this is really something that I'm sad about. I think that there's a ton that could be done to promote Hungarian wine abroad. And I think this would allow the producers to have more capital. It'd be more capital coming into Hungary, more sales, more consistent kind of recognition. It would make people more excited to go to Hungary. It would encourage maybe more Hungarian food here, which would be cool. So things that ultimately would really help Hungary, but it's like an investment which it doesn't have an immediate payout, and the winemakers don't want to invest in that. Really, it seems like it should be possibly the state's role, and it's not happening. But yeah, I'm definitely always trying to push this with everyone I talk to in Hungary. So
maybe Hungary will also have a master sommelier in the future, and then maybe he can speak up also a little bit about Hungarian wines, because I think also just to pair a face with a country who is really, as you mentioned, also respectable and knowledgeable. I think it's a great help. And
having that's true, like in a way, this is also marketing. This is having like a spokesman for Hungarian wine is also marketing, having more events, having a budget for a special display, or really like research into cool types of labels, or maybe giving wineries an incentive or a like some financial assistance to update their labels or update their bottles, or this kind of thing would be great. But yeah, a spokesman would also be awesome. Are you thinking of going for your master sommelier?
not in my 2 years plan, so to say.
Okay.
But maybe
Well, okay. Well, we need
see,
it soon, so maybe your 4-year plan.
maybe I should accelerate my learning process.
Yes,
And
that would be
which
great.
goals do you have maybe for the future?
Well, I would love to continue promoting Hungarian wine. For my business, the goals are to expand to more states. In the US, every state is a different market, so it's a different set of laws and different distribution requirements. So right now we have distribution in about 8 states. So, and they're good markets for sure. Like there are a lot of states that we could get a distributor, but I mean, the sales would be so small that it wouldn't really make sense. But I would love this year to expand to more states. And I think if we're in more states, and we also have the capacity to buy more wine, which means that we could work with more producers, because there are just so many great wines in Hungary. And it really is, sounds like I'm just trying to be nice, but there are really so many great wines, and it is really hard to pick from all the awesome wines that are available in Hungary. So I would love it if we could represent more wineries and we can sell in more markets here, so that there's just more exposure.
And do you maybe like where do you market your products now online? Because you have your website and you also have like an e-commerce site where people can go to, or?
And unfortunately, no. So the laws in the US don't allow that. Um, in the US, a distributor cannot be a retailer, even an e-retailer. So instead, what we can do is, and every state, the tricky thing also is that in the US, every state has different laws about distribution, online sales, all this stuff. So what we do is, you'll notice if you're on our website, if you go to like the different wines, a lot of them will have a link that goes to buy it, and those links are going to shops that we sell to. So for instance, you might click on a link or you might click on a bottle of bull's blood and there's a link that says buy and it takes you to Verve Wine's website. And
Mhm.
Verve Wine is a shop and they sell online and they ship to all 50 states.
Okay.
So this is like the best we can do, unfortunately. It's just how the laws work in New York specifically is pretty strict about it.
Mm.
But we try to make it as easy as possible for people to find our wine.
And where, because maybe we will have some listeners from New York. So
Yeah.
in the future, if they want to visit your tasting events, where
Mhm.
can they find these events or?
Yeah, so you can find our events on our website, which is palinkerie.com. I'm also trying to promote our events on Facebook, on Instagram. So either of these platforms, if you follow us or you check the events on Facebook, you can find out what's going on.
Mm.
And it's sort of the same, like I'm also on social media trying to update where you can buy our wines and things like this, just to make it easy for people. And if it's still not really working out, like always kind of message us or whatever, and we can let you know what's coming up.
Perfect. And
Yeah.
maybe do you have some plans for the next music video already?
Oh,
Which flavor would you pick now?
I would love to do another music video. I think Bull's Blood could be fun.
Mm.
I think a six putonhos too. So my friend Jeff, who is in the Harsh Level of music video, the Jombor, he's called.
Okay.
My friend Jeff, he once said that he wanted a T-shirt that said, "I don't get out of bed for less than six putonhos," which I thought was amazing. And I think it would be really fun to do a six putonhos music video as well, because it would be so like over the top, kind of glamorous, glitzy, like high sugar, golden juice. I think both of those would be pretty fun. But
Very-
I also would be open to doing a second Harsh Levelou video. Honestly, I think just more producers in Hungary, if you're listening, make more Harsh Levelou, because I personally love Harsh Levelou. I think it's such a great wine, and it's really along the lines of what consumers like right now. It's like we were talking about Cake Franco's flavor profile. I think
Mhm.
Harsh Levelou flavor profile, very textured, apricot, honey, good acidity. And this is sort of like a Chenin Blanc, and this is so on brand right now with what consumers are looking for. If you're listening, Hungarian winemakers,
Please
plant
make.
more Hárslevelű so we can make more music videos.
Nice, good idea. And maybe I don't know if it's do you have any, but and it's maybe not the most kind question, but do you have maybe a favorite wine region in Hungary
Mm,
that you go to maybe
well,
just for wine tourism or you just, for holiday?
you know, I really, it's like picking my favorite child. I really do love, I mean, all of the wine regions I represent, I think are amazing in their own way. If I'm on holiday, though, I mean, you know what I'm going to say. It's going to be to Balaton.
Yeah.
And I also think that the north side of Lake Balaton, especially, they are, it's really an exciting place for change right now. This is an area where I think they are just, things are changing, things are developing, and you're seeing, this is where you're seeing people trying natural wine. This is where you're seeing sort of like a little bit more modern things happening, but on really small scale, which is exactly what I love. And for me, the perfect holiday is going to Balaton. I go to Chopak, then I go to Köveská, and then I go up to Gilveshi in St. George Hedge
Mhm.
and up to Shumlo. So all of this Balaton Highlands thing. The weather's amazing. It's gorgeous. The wines are great. So, but that's not to say I don't love all the other regions. They are all wonderful in their own way. But Balaton, is like, it's just really stunning and really exciting stuff happening, changing in wine too.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I was born there, so it's really in my heart.
Oh,
But I
perfect.
think, but I think it's also, I can only agree, and I think Balaton Uplands is also great because in such a small place you can visit and you can see so many wine styles and so many original stories and so many indigenous grape varieties. So I think it's not so common in the world that you go to a wine region and you drive maybe for 10, then 15, then 20 minutes, and you tasted 3, 4, 5 indigenous grape varieties which you haven't heard of, and all taste great. And you can sit on the terrace and look, have this gorgeous view. And then, it's like a lot of people say it's Tuscany or it's a Hungarian Tuscany, but
Hmm.
I don't think it's the best marketing expression, but I think it's a similar vibe maybe because you really don't need to have a briefcase of money and too much knowledge, but you meet a lot of people and you can learn a lot and just have a gorgeous view and gorgeous weather. So yeah,
That's exactly right. You're making me want to book my trip.
I spent a lot of sometimes in Südtirol, and I think they had a really big like revolution in the 70s or 80s when the wine tourism also changed and a lot of like high-end tourists, so to say, started to come to the region, and then also the prices kind of went up for the wines and how the whole wine tourism have the wine industry itself in the region. So I think it would be also another great help from the Hungarian government itself, but also from others, from the tourism bodies to promote wine tourism, and not only in the Balaton, of course, where you said, but also in other regions, because I think it's also a marketing tool itself for the
Hmm.
wines.
I
Like,
completely agree, especially when you have wines that are made in such a beautiful place and the winemakers are so wonderful and the whole experience is really magical. And um, it's, I've only brought one of my sommelier clients to Hungary last summer. His name is JR. He works at Flatiron Wines, which is a shop in New York. And we went to Hungary together. And I showed him, we went to Tokaj, we went to Eger, we went to Balaton. And I think it was so great because I think it's so charming and amazing as an American myself. And it was so fun to show him that experience because it is actually really a special vibe and a wonderful place. And being there to see it, to taste there is such its own experience. I think the Hungarian people also are very hospitable, really welcoming to people who come to visit. And it's a really warm feeling when you visit a winery. And also, even like a Hungarian restaurant, I think like a higher end Hungarian restaurant, it's really nice service. This is something Hungarians are pretty good at. So it's really a great experience. Um, I think, yeah, the big thing that would probably need to be invested in would be the transportation because I take the train to Balaton and I made poor JR last summer take it with me. It was like really hot and the train was super crowded with a bunch of kids for some reason. And he was just sweating and I felt so bad. He was
and
so
they don't serve,
uncomfortable.
yeah, and they don't serve fridge on the
No
train.
Frutch, exactly. That was the main problem.
Yeah, true. Thank you very much for your kind thoughts and
Yes, thank you
your,
so much for having me. It was great to talk a little bit about wine and harsh leveloo and all that.
great. And we are waiting for the next video, of course. And
Going to start developing it right away.
please. And I also gonna put all the links below where people could find you. And maybe do you have some final words? Maybe in the next weeks, do you have something coming up, or what do you want to
Hmm.
mention? Something?
Well, I would say that so March 1st, the New York State issued a ban on plastic bags, like that you get at the grocery store, the deli, or whatever. Basically, I know that in Europe this is long gone, but in the US, people are still getting a plastic bag when they go to the grocery store. And these are just filling up the landfills and the oceans all over the world. And it's like millions and millions of these stupid bags. So New York State banned plastic bags, like these like crappy grocery store bags, March 1st. So at the beginning of April, we are having a party in Brooklyn that's going to be we made tote bags that say, surprisingly, Harsh Levelu on them. And we are going to have a party promoting our new Harsh totes. And it's in correspondence with this plastic bag ban. So you have to bring your own bag so you can get a Harsh Levelu bag instead. And you can use that when you go to the store. So we're having this party in Brooklyn. This is on April 16th. But that's our next like big event that we're having. The only other final word would just be to drink Hungarian wine. Visit Hungary if you can. Travel right now is very affordable, so
Yeah, let's go for it.
book your ticket.
Yeah, true. Athena, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Good luck with your good work.
Thank you.